Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Secure the Seat Live. My name is Minda Hartz and I'm so happy that you're here with us today. I know you could be anywhere on the internet and you're here with us, so we appreciate you being here. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. You're already automatically part of the squad. If you rock with us every Monday, welcome back. How was your weekend? Let us know in the chat if you're watching us live, and I know some of you join in later in the week and watch the replay. And so if you didn't know, every single show then is added to YouTube, so you can just go to Secure the Seat Live and you can find all the gems from any of the past Mondays. And so we're so happy that you're here. A couple of quick housekeeping things that I wanted to remind you all about is You Are More Than Magic. My young adult book comes out April 5th. I can't believe that I have another book that's on its way. But I recorded the audio book last week, and I've been sipping a lot of throat coat to prepare for this week, but I'm just so excited for our young girls to get this book. It's essentially a young adult version of the memo. So I'm super excited about it. So it's available wherever you like to buy your books. And then on the 15th, I will be posting it on my LinkedIn and social media, but I am doing something fun for Women's History Month. Shout out to all the women that have come before us and done some amazing things. And shout out to each and every one of you, because you are making history each and every day. Our existence in this world is history. And so I thank you for how you show up. But on March 15th, I'm doing a special version, an audio play of the memo, where I'm working with some different Black and brown actresses, and we're going to reimagine different scenes from the memo and kind of have some fun. So think of Vagina Monologues meets Insecure on Twitter Spaces. And so that's on March 15th. So we're going to have some fun with that. So save the date. It's at 4 p.m. West Coast, 7 p.m. East Coast. And I'm just super excited to bring that to you. So doing something a little bit differently. But again, thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited for today's guest. I don't always know all the guests personally that come on the show, but I love that I can say that Daisy is a friend. She's been and a mentor. She's been so supportive on my career journey. When I was just kind of getting going on my company, The Memo, Daisy was one of the first few people I went to go and see when she was working at Viacom, and she's just been such a great friend ever since. And I am happy that I get to share her first book that's coming out next Tuesday, Inclusion Revolution. We're going to drop it in the chat. So we want to make sure that you get that pre-order in. Let me tell you, as a author of 2 books, about to be 3, pre-orders, when we say please pre-order, we're not saying it just because we think it's a cute saying. It really matters those first week of sales. And so please support Daisy. She's awesome. You're going to find out even more about her if you haven't been following her work. She has a great TED Talk. She has just so much amazing insight about the DEI world. And so without further ado, I am going to bring Daisy to the stage. Hey girl, hey.
Hey, Linda, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I love that intro. And it took me back to so many years ago when we first met.
Yes.
I can remember as if it was yesterday, you walking into my office and telling me your story and your business case for the memo, and me thinking, goodness, this is what all women of color need.
Well, I thank you for not pushing me out of the door and winding my back and shoving me down. You listened and you supported me in so many ways, and I'm just so proud of you. But for those who may not be familiar with your work, please, we see Vice Media on the, you've done a lot, Daisy, but fill people in for those who may not know about the work you've done.
Sure. Thank you, Minda. Hi, everyone. Daisy Auger-Domínguez. I am currently Chief People Officer at Vice Media Group. But I've been around for some time. I started my career about 2 decades ago as a credit risk analyst at Moody's Investor Service. I eventually managed their global foundation, and then eventually became the company's first head of diversity and inclusion. And that is how my career in HR and diversity and inclusion started. And from Moody's, I've moved on to Time Warner, to Disney, to Google, to Viacom, launched my own consultancy, and then came back to Vice Media. And I have been leading the company's people, culture, and corporate services for the past 2 years, which means that I joined the company right at the beginning of the pandemic and have literally still not met about 2/3 of my team globally, because we are still on screens.
Yes, that's another conversation, right, about what that looks like. But we appreciate you. And again, your book comes out next Tuesday. We're going to drop the link in the chat so people can get that in their carts. I already see people are primarily watching us on LinkedIn and YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And I see some people in the chat saying that some have already pre-ordered. So you already understood the assignment. That's good.
Amazing.
But I want to talk about your debut book, Inclusion Revolution, The Essential Guide to Dismantling Racial Inequality in the Workplace. As I said, it comes out next Tuesday. Why did you decide to write this book, Daisy?
Oh, Minda. I wrote Inclusion Revolution because I've grown increasingly tired of short-lived promises. We in this work, we talk a lot about awareness. And I remind and coach our leaders and managers and employees that I work with that awareness is just the first step. Action is where change really happens. And I have worked in enough organizations to see that there's so much human potential that's left unrealized when within organizations, because we have been unwilling to recognize the barriers that exist for historically excluded employees, Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, non-binary. And we've been unwilling to make the changes that are necessary to dismantle these inequities. And so I wanted to write a book that was going to honor my experience and the experience of so many of removing the roadblocks, trying to remove the roadblocks that make workplaces unwelcoming, unequal, and often unsafe, as you write in your books, to women, BIPOC, people with disabilities, and other non-normative people. And I wanted it to be specific for managers because, management is really hard work, Minda, and it's what most directly impacts the experience of workers. But the people that are doing it typically have never been taught how to do it well, and much less with an inclusive and equitable lens. So I wanted to give them a bit of a love note, if you will, a book that was designed to speak through. If you read Inclusion Revolution, it goes through the full employee life cycle, from recruitment to onboarding, professional development, advancement, growth. It's not a management book in and of itself that, where you can go into each chapter and it's going to give you sort of the old standard management tools, but it is a book that walks you through the employee life cycle, as we say in HR, and gives you real talk, real examples, toolkits, resources on how to approach this work with not just inclusion, but equity and racial equity as a lens.
I love that so much. And, one of the things that I appreciate about your book is that you do have kind of that employee life cycle. And I think that that's so key, because I think sometimes managers, leaders, we think about one particular piece of the pie, right, at work, but the whole journey should be equitable.
Yes, thank you. Amen.
I love that so much. So for those who might not understand what racial inequality might look like, let's level set a little bit. What is your definition of it, and what are some examples of how it shows up in the workplace?
Well, I frame it as racial and systemic inequity, because it's about the practices, the policies, the behaviors, the decisions, those everyday decisions that we make that advantage the majority, mostly white men, and disadvantage historically excluded employees who are mostly Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And those disadvantages show up in respect to jobs, work assignments, promotions, compensations, and really just your general engagement across teams. And the tricky part about racial inequity is that it shows up in covert and overt ways, and that is what we tend to forget. It's really challenging sometimes to get white employees in an organization and managers and leaders to address racism, because they look around and they say, well, no, we have equal employment opportunity laws. We have, we have processes to make sure that, that we include fairness and sustainable practices to bring talent. And what they don't see is all of these covert and overt ways in which we keep talent marginalized and sidelined. And so examples, you've heard them over and over again. I'll talk about recruitment. Research shows that people of color are well aware of discriminatory tendencies towards Black sounding names in the recruitment process. And so what do? They sometimes try to counteract them by masking their race, because they know that if their name sounds less Black, they will have a bigger chance of being called in for an interview. That research is so dated, Minda, but it's still the case. It still happens, and we call it unconscious bias, but we know sometimes it's not really that unconscious. Sometimes it's quite explicit in many cases. I think another example from the recruitment point is that you often hear organizations say that it's a pipeline issue. There's just not enough Black people with the skills and experience that you're looking for this area. Instead of really looking at their inadequate recruitment efforts and their inability to look elsewhere more expansively, to think about talent differently, to think about the capabilities that you're looking for differently, to actually step back and say, do I continue to look, I say that I want to hire Black talent, but I keep on doing the same things that I've done before, which have led to what? A predominantly white organization. Perhaps I should be trying to do something different. That's where racism shows up. And in my experience working across, as various industries from tech, media, and finance, the real culprit is culture-based practices of promoting leaders within organizations which have already low diversity, rather than really conducting broader industry-wide searches and spending the time to truly grow and advance the racially diverse talent in your organizations. I could go on, but those are just a few examples.
Let me get my tambourine out. Because you're preaching on this Monday afternoon or morning, wherever you're listening from. But I'm like, yes, preach all the tambourine moments, because that is true. And you really hit on the one I know that kind of like grinds my gears about we can't find Black and brown talent. But like you said, your process is inadequate. Like, where's the ownership, right?
Where I another one that's often known, and this comes from the tech space, is we really want to hire diverse talent, but we don't want to lower the hiring bar. And my response is often, I was like, first of all, no one's asking you to lower the hiring bar. I'm simply asking you to think about hiring in an inclusive way. But I also like to remind people, let's be clear. We lower and raise the hiring bar all the time for the people that we want to do so for. So what is stopping you? What is it that about a Black or brown person that makes you think that that's lowering the hiring bar? Because I have led recruitment teams for many, many years, and I have seen mediocrity be hired over and over again and not be questioned at all. So the hurdles for getting those positions are a lot higher when you look different, behave differently, and sound differently.
Yes, and the chats on the various platforms are going crazy, Daisy, because you've also hit a point. And on that note, we're going to drop Daisy's new book that's out next week in the chat, so make sure you get it. If this resonates with you, then there's more where that came from. But I think it's so important to talk about that because, listen, I could pull up about 10 or more than that, but I could point us to 10 company pages on the About Us page. I'm going to show you what lowering the bar looks like.
Oh, goodness.
So definitely, but the narrative around us, right, when we're there, that somehow that means that it's lower.
It is. And, Minda, I think part of the challenge in this work is that, to do this work well, progress really requires a deeper diagnosis of these routine practices that we take for granted, because they drive the outcomes that you want to change, but you keep on saying that you want to change the outcome, but not the process. And so that's a lot of what I write about in my book. It's like, it's if you're going to change the outcome, that means that you have to address the root cause of what's keeping your organization from being predominantly white, what's keeping your organization from being predominantly male, whatever it is, because every organization is different. But for the most part, we know that the majority of organizations, when you're looking at the racial and ethnic composition of an organization, it looks like this is a triangle. Most get hired. You do a great job of hiring junior level talent, but getting them to the upper rungs, that's the challenge. And for some reason, we keep on blaming the employees and not the systems and the structures that keep them from advancing.
That part right there. Also, while we're kind of talking about it, something that I know you talk about too, and you mentioned in the book, is diversity training programs. I know that tons of places are keep trying to push out these programs, but talk to us about why you think they fail, and where the opportunities lie.
Minda, I've found that the real barrier to diversity, equity, and inclusion in organizations is not figuring out what can we do, but rather are we willing to do it? And diversity trainings is a great example because organizations often misattribute workplace inequity to the character of individual actors, sort of the so-called bad apples. Someone stepped out of turn, someone said something racially inappropriate. They attribute it to that instead of the broader structural factors that are enabling that behavior. So as a result, you roll out trainings to fix employees while you're dedicating relatively little attention to what may be a toxic organizational culture, for example, because it's much easier to pinpoint and blame individuals when problems arise. And when companies face crises related to racism, and we saw this in the last 2 years, the knee-jerk response is to fire the individuals involved or replace them, rather than examining how your culture licenses or even encourages that type of behavior. And I remember when I first joined Vice in May of 2020, a couple of weeks later, we were in our own racial reckoning. And I was in a meeting with team members where they were demanding of me to deliver anti-racist training. Then I remember it was like on a Tuesday, and they were like, and we need to see it by Friday. And, my legal team, everybody was like, don't respond, don't engage. And my first response was, no, that would be irresponsible of me to just go into a library and pull out a training and deliver it for you so that I feel better that we delivered anti-racism training. What I'm going to do is understand the root cause of the trauma, the hurt, the challenges that you're all facing, and then we will design the right interventions for you. And by the way, they're not going to be just for you, but they're going to be for everyone because we're all part of this system. We're all part of this structure. I need to understand the logic of what got us here so that I can solve for it. So it's not necessarily that I'm anti-diversity trainings themselves, is the approach that we have taken to deliver trainings and the fact that we deliver them in these one-offs as if one unconscious bias training is going to solve for everything. As in one anti-racism training, we delivered a racial equity training at Vice, but by the time that we delivered that training, we had already set foundational learnings before that to get everyone on the same page as to what we meant as a company and what our expectations were of you as employees, no matter your background, how to create a racially equitable organization. And then the next set of trainings and learnings have to feed off of that and have to be enveloped in that and have to take into account the fact that I, as a woman of color, when I used to joke when I remember when I worked at Disney, there was a set of trainings around the Hispanic community. And I would go in with my colleague, and we were the only 2 Latino executives, and we'd sit down and go, okay, you ready to learn about yourself? Because, we were being thrust into these meetings and trainings without context of our own lived experience. So I think it's the lack of proper design and thought into these trainings that has made them fail for quite some time.
Listen, that was such a word. I appreciate you saying that because I think that is what courageous leadership is, right? Saying, wait, hold up, let's pump the brakes a bit. It's not enough to just roll this out and then we check the box, right? Like what are the issues here? What are the pain points? Like, let's be thoughtful about this because otherwise we're just going to be having the same old training every year, right? Like those sexual harassment ones that pop through your email and you're like,
and you roll your eyes, you're like, and how quickly can I get through this and pass the test? Instead of truly absorbing the learnings. And by the way, Minda, we're all selfish beings. So we all want to know what's in it for me. What do I learn? And organizations have not contextualized this work. And it's not up to the organization per se. This is why I wrote my book for managers and those who want to be aspiring managers. It's my responsibility as a manager is to be able to convey to my team, why are you doing this? For what purpose? For what outcome are we trying to achieve? And we haven't made those connections. And throughout my book, I deliver those messages very clearly to managers. And I tell people, it's like, don't look to the left or the right. This is you. This is your responsibility. It is. And if you take the responsibility and you take the responsibility and if everybody does, then we're going to really see meaningful change in our organizations.
Absolutely. For the people in the back, Daisy, what's the name of the book and when does it come out?
Oh my goodness. My book is called Inclusion Revolution, The Essential Guide to Dismantling Racial Inequity in the Workplace. And it comes out March 15th, and I can't believe it. And as you said at the beginning of the talk, as I'm a first-time author, so I am learning that pre-orders are the thing. So go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local booksellers. My girlfriend who lives in Washington Heights here in New York just told me that she ordered it at her local bookseller around the corner. I was thrilled. But it's Inclusion Revolution, catchy title, meaningful subject, and really, it's a collection of my life's work and my mission and purpose in life.
Yes, I'm so proud of you. Make sure that you get that. And then also call your local libraries too and make sure that they get it as well, because we want to make sure that everybody has access to this information. Daisy, I could talk to you all day, you know that, but I know we both have a work day ahead of us, but we want to roll into our bonus questions. I am a lover of grits and rap lyrics. Do you eat grits? Do you eat grits, Daisy?
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Yes.
How do you like to eat your grits when you eat them?
You know, my husband grew up in the South. He's white, but he grew up in the South. I like mine with a lot of butter. It's like, I need a lot of butter. He just made them actually not long ago. He makes the best consistency, the thickest grits I've ever had with lots of butter.
My man, yes. Butter is the way to go. I like to add some salt, but as I'm aging, Daisy, I shouldn't be eating as much salt. So, I'm trying to.
I know. We add salt and I like the pepper. He doesn't, but I like the pepper too.
I love it. And, with a good bowl of grits is always a good rap lyric. What is your favorite rap lyric and why?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I just came back from doing 2 back-to-back Peloton classes with Tribe Called Quest. So I'm going to have to tell you that the song, and I was doing one was a yoga class with Chelsea Roberts. And it was the minute Scenario came on, I literally lost my pose and started going, so what's this scenario? And frankly, the reason why it gets me so excited is that it reminds me of being young. It reminds me of being in college in those parties where you could like barely dance or move, but we were all sweating. We were all so excited. And the minute I hear Scenario, I start jumping, I start dancing, and I feel like I'm in my 20s again.
I love that feeling. And as you were telling me that, I was thinking about my house party days when you're like, it's and you're just up against the wall trying to find a place
trying to dance, and then a good song comes on and you're like, yep.
Now I can imagine after the pandemic being in like somebody's hot apartment, like smothered.
I know that feels so scary now, but that was our life before. Absolutely.
That was the Friday that was the vibe you were trying to find. Like now it's
if it wasn't sweaty and tight, like it wasn't a good jam.
Oh, good times. I love that so much. And I see that people in the chat are loving that too. And my final question, everybody has the ability to be a leader. We don't have to wait for our performance review or for somebody to give us that title. What is one tip or piece of advice you would give our viewers about how to make the workplace better than they found it?
Ask questions before you provide answers. The first step is understanding the lived reality of your team members, your colleagues, those around you, what obstacles they face, and why it is a problem for your organization. We jump so quickly, we overreact instead of really thinking about what needs to be solved for. My favorite question to ask my teams is, what are we solving for? No matter what we're trying to solve for. And then we can come to the right solutions. So I think that good leaders ask questions, dig deep before they provide real answers.
Listen, I love that so much. I hope everybody plays that back. You go back to YouTube after it airs on LinkedIn and think about that. What questions are we asking this week and what are we solving for? I love that so much. Daisy, any final thoughts just as people are going into the week that you'd like to leave them with, be it about your book or just anything that we've talked about today?
Oh, goodness. This is what I remind everybody. You have the power to drive change. Change is possible. Sometimes we let go of our voice. We let our courage diminish because the world that we live in is a harsh one and the obstacles that we face are real. But call a friend, hold someone's hand, and remember that we all have this magic and light in us to deliver and build the organizations that we deserve. and we deserve workplaces that work for everyone.
Amen. We absolutely do. We all should be able to thrive and not just survive. And so make sure that you get your copy of Inclusion Revolution, get it for you and get it for a friend, don't or get it for your manager. But I do believe that it's so important that our managers have the tools to commit to equity. And sometimes, as you said earlier, Daisy, they just don't know what they don't know because we're thrust into a management situation and we don't have the tools we need. And so let's make sure we equip them with the tools, the handbook. And I know what book I'm adding to my syllabus at NYU to teach because it's so important for the whole journey. The whole employee cycle is so important. And so congratulations on your upcoming book. Thank you for joining us. And I'm just so excited to see your book out in the world and for people that don't know the work you do to love you even more like the rest of us who already know. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Minda, and congrats to you. Appreciate you creating the space.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Oh, and all of you, we know that it's a new month and we have our affirmations for the month. I know that, that's something we started at the top of this year. And so I'm going to bring Mike to the stage really quick to give you all your affirmation for this month. And we'll go from there. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Minda, how you doing?
Good. Great show, right?
Oh, man, you and Daisy killed it. Amazing show. Amazing show.
All right. Well, make sure everybody grabs that book, Inclusion Revolution, and share it out with your families, with your family at work, all the folks so that we get that in there, and make sure that you book Daisy, bring her in to talk to your staff and to your teams. It's so important that we do that. Mike, what's our affirmation for today, for the month?
Yeah. Absolutely, Minda. Our affirmation for this month is I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I think a lot of times in life we get so caught up in where everybody else is, right? What everybody else is doing, what they think about us, how they feel about us, what they're saying about us. You have to say to yourself, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I think somebody needs to hear this today because other people's opinion is really none of your business if we think about it. Other people's thoughts about you, how they feel about you, you cannot control that. But one thing you can control is your own self. And you have to get your own self in order for you to lead anybody else. So you have to continue to tell yourself, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Not, I made this mistake and I used to be with this person and I used to do this. And what if something happens? And don't worry about all that. You're right where you're supposed to be. God has placed you here for a reason. You have a calling. You have a purpose. This is your week. I always say this is your time and this is your season. Somebody's got to get that today. Stop living in the past. You got to worry. You can't go to the future if you're looking in the rearview mirror. You just can't do it. So you have to get to a place where you continue to tell yourself you are right where you're supposed to be. So as we're talking about new materials and new books, get Daisy's book. This is a perfect week to start. Get Minda's book Right Within, get the memo, get the new book, You're More Than Magic. This is the time to start a new season. Don't worry about the first 2 months. This is your time right now. March, you're gonna have the best month of your life. You are right where you're supposed to be. Thank you, Minda.
Listen, I guess we're still at church. I'm getting the tambourine back out.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Right where you're supposed to be. I hope you hold on to that whenever something's shaky or somebody's moving weird or funny. Remind yourself that you are right where you're supposed to be. And if you find that you're not where you're supposed to be, get where you need to be. That's important too. So thank you, Mike, for that. That is our affirmation for the month. Again, make sure that you get Inclusion Revolution. Also follow me on LinkedIn if you're not, or Twitter, so that you can join us for the memo monologues. It is Vaginal Monologues meets Insecure on Twitter Spaces on March 15th. We're reimagining stories that I tell in the memo, but in a more bigger way. And we're going to have some fun for Women's History Month. So again, keep securing your seat and have a great week. You're right where you're supposed to be because you were here with us today.